Okay. How was that? That little
Good.
grounding there.
Always good.
I've never done that before, a
Oh,
podcast. I was just called to do it at this particular moment. Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. Do you have a grounding practice that you do daily, weekly, in the minute, whenever it is? Anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it would be, other than movement, something really similar to what you did, just
Mm.
allowing the breath to drop deeper in the body, feeling myself all the way through to my feet. When you named the feet on the floor, it was exactly what I was noticing in that moment. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I just listened to this fantastic podcast this morning. It's all about light, of course, sunlight, but how with we no longer have incandescent bulbs, at least in California, we don't have incandescent bulbs. We can't even buy them. I know other states you can still get incandescent bulbs, but the reason why that's important is because all of these LED lights are just emitting blue light constantly,
Mm,
and there's no red light coming. And so when we're outside, obviously the sun is filled with all of that UV light that we need, and grounding, how important that is.
very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's my other practice, is getting the sunlight and also bare feet on the ground
Mm,
and making sure I'm around trees.
yes.
Yeah.
And you live around trees, don't you?
Yeah,
Are you
I think
in nature regularly?
um I think I'm teaching on Zoom most regularly. So it has to become an intentional practice to remind myself to go outside, and I have a park with a stream that's really close to me, and I can just sit and be under a tree, take my shoes off, feel the grass. So, yeah, and I can drive up to nature. Is really close by, mountains and those types of things.
Did you always have this sort of awareness in terms of self care, or was that sort of a later in life practice that you've employed?
100% later in life practice. I was so disconnected from the body of myself that I didn't even know I was disconnected.
Hmm. What does that mean to be disconnected from your body?
To me, it means having a felt sense of who I am rather than ideas about who I am and sourcing who I am from outside of me and the reflections from others or the way that I look. Um, the way I look in the mirror, the clothes I might choose to wear, the achievements I have, rather than trying to feel or know who I am and those things in my body, knowing and feeling who I am all the way down to my toes.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think a lot of women and men too are not in their bodies.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's true.
What's going on there? What do you think that's about?
It's about a lot of possibilities. The one that I believe we all share is we live in a time where we have really placed our intellect and our brains, which are such an important part of ourselves and are a part of the body, but really put that part of who we are as really the penthouse of who we are, as we call it the executive function, this part of the brain. So kind of the CEO, the one in charge. And really have leaned into, even in therapeutic circles, that the brain is the source of the answers and also the source of the problems, and really focus most of everything on the brain part of the body. So I think we all have that relationship to being aware of ourselves up here versus our whole body self. I think another big reason is that, and I'm always careful to make generalizations around gender, but it does seem to me that women are more conditioned. I think all humans have this experience, but women tend to be more conditioned that the body is an object
Mhm.
and the body is a thing, and therefore the body is often a problem for us. Um,
Yeah.
and so that creates a separation, a lack of safety, a lack of feeling like my body belongs to me, a lack of real relationship with our body selves.
Yeah.
So there's that. Also, for women, in many ways, it isn't totally safe to be fully in our bodies. So there's a way that we've learned to protect ourselves walking around, even, down the street. It's an experience we have that we get a gaze that doesn't feel good, or we're walking at night and it feels scary. So all those things tend to pull us up here in a way from our body. And then I think the last, maybe not the last, but the big one that happened to me is that's the very nature of trauma. So if any of us have been through trauma at any point in our life, the nature of unhealed trauma is that it's fundamentally a separation from our body.
So the trauma separates, just what you said. Our way of surviving is to distance ourselves from our body, which is so closely associated with the trauma. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and literally our body holds the memories of everything we've been through, whether that's trauma or different emotions that we have. There's a form of memory that's called implicit, which is all in the body. So in the body is a lot of the beautiful things that we felt during our lives, but also the things that were really difficult to feel. And we have this brain whose, beautiful job is to protect us from harm, may create a misunderstanding in us that going into the body where also the feelings are and the subconscious is a dangerous and unsafe place to be. So we may have also developed a habit where the brain is controlling our body. So certainly in trauma, our brain might say, ooh, where the trauma was felt most was in the shock in the body and the fear in the body and the grief and the, whatever, the aloneness that we might have felt. So the brain's memory of that is that's not a safe thing or a good thing to feel. So don't go down there. So we start to maybe live up here more.
And you were saying personally that was your experience. And as a result, maybe of your experience, you've created this beautiful practice. Tell us about Ishtara.
Oh, where do I start? Ishtara is the name I gave to a method that I created by following my own body to help me with something that I had looked for years to get help with, which was some of the symptoms and effects of pretty extensive childhood trauma that I had experienced. Nowadays, we live in a world where there's so much knowledge about somatic healing and somatic approaches to healing trauma. But when I was looking for solutions, that was not readily available. And so, after years of looking for things, whether it was to help with the extreme end, like panic attacks, but also the side of, having childhood trauma that is very common to most people, which is now I have patterns that are showing up either in my romantic relationships or my relationships with my friends, or maybe it's showing up around my relationship to my work or my money, or just where these patterns start to be on repeat. I had been looking for solutions for myself and tried everything. And it wasn't until I found a way that I learned from another teacher to listen to and follow my own body. I started to get a feeling of how my psychology was running in my nervous system. Like I could literally feel if I got triggered, oh, it goes up my body in this way, and it has this sort of temperature, and it moves in this direction in my body. And I could start working with these things from my felt senses in the terms of like my body and how my triggers and my anxiety and my emotions were moving in my body. And because I could feel them, I could actually heal them, and I could transform these things that I was feeling. And because that was like sort of in my own hands, if you will, and not something I was just thinking or understanding, I was able to heal myself through a movement method that I created just by listening to myself. So Ishtara is a movement method that I teach people so that they can also learn to listen to and follow their own body. And then they can use this technique to transform a variety of things, whether it be an emotional experience all the way up to if they're working on patterns that are pretty conditioned in themselves that show up in their relationships or their feelings about themselves or their behaviors. They can actually go to the body and to their nervous system and start changing how they feel and how they show up on their own.
I can just speak here for a moment. Ishtara is one of the most beautiful experiences of my entire life. I started practicing with you in 2020. We were deep in that moment of time. And I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I super trusted the woman who introduced me to you. And then when you and I spoke, I said, okay, sign me up. And I knew what to expect, but I didn't really know what to expect. And there's something so beautiful about learning to be in your body and listen to her in a way and honor her in a way that at least I was never taught. I think most modern American women are never taught. I know culturally these practices exist around the globe. My culture did not teach me this. So what you're doing is incredible, with like a capital incredible word and lots of exclamation points.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stacey. I'm so happy you had that experience. And, just reflecting on that it was someone you trusted that suggested it to you. And it was so mysterious and hard to know what it is. It's hard for me to explain it because it does so many things. So yeah, it's so not a brain sort of understanding. It's more of something that we experience, that you have to experience. And I'm really glad you trusted that and were able to have a beautiful experience that you named, which I will give you the credit for that, because I really hold myself as a language teacher. So I think my job was to teach you a new language to speak to your body, but that beautiful experience is so coming from you and your willingness to listen to yourself.
Thank you. You said something earlier in your description about having tried everything, right? You're a beautiful woman and we're so well resourced. And I think we try everything. We listen to all the biohackers, we read all the books, we listen to the podcasts, we see the therapists, we work with the coaches, we do. And some of it might work for a little while and then it doesn't work. What kept you going in the pursuit of, healing or addressing this? Because it's, also what you're carrying around is heavy.
Yeah. In terms of what kept me going, in terms of looking for solutions for what happened to me as a child.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful question. And it gives me pause. I think that spark of life that we all have, that we just want so much to live a life that is fulfilling and meaningful, and beautiful, and how painful it can be when we're showing up in all the ways that we know how and something's missing. And, I think it was just that life force in me, that natural impulse to want to be joyful and alive and free, and the willingness to be honest with myself, that even though, like you said, on paper, it wasn't, I was doing really well in all of those outer things. I had a really great career. I did have great friends. I lived in a beautiful home. I was doing well financially, but that being honest, that something in me was missing, and that there was one particular area, in my case, it's different for everyone. In my case, it was romantic relationship, where I had some really beautiful dreams there, and it just kept repeating into the same heartbreak again and again. So I think, at first what kept me going was wanting to solve that and wanting to line up my deep desires with everything that it seemed like I was capable of being successful, but I was not. And the thing that mattered the most to me, that kept me going. And then what kept me going after that was reaching an age and a stage where I had spent 20 years trying to make a specific desire come true, like I named in romantic love. And I think I just reached that point in midlife where I looked around me and I said, what am I doing? I'm continually trying to find more fulfillment and passion through this part that I have no control over, which is with another person. And I just paused long enough to say, why don't I just feel that in myself? What is missing? I can remember I used to feel that way when I was really young. Where did that go? And I think that that's just such a natural part of life, to want to feel joyful, free, passion filled, to know who we are and why we're here. And that was the pivotal moment for me when I made a decision that I was going to stop looking for that outside of me. And I was going to ask more the question, where did that go? And how can I find that in a way inside me that no one could ever take from me, that wasn't dependent on anybody else? And that was something worth really going for, and being willing to do the hard work it took to find it.
I mean, that is the question, right? If answering that question, or being willing to see that, wow, I don't know the answer. I've been ignoring this. Yeah.
Yeah, it literally was a feeling that I had been outsourcing it, in my case, to another person. Sometimes we do that, in pursuit of our career, or we can even do it with the idea of a purpose. Or, many times I was looking to have it in my spiritual life and the things I was pursuing out there, but those were always fleeting. I could have, a peak experience, but then a week later I was back to, feeling like something was missing and I couldn't hold on to it.
So once you realized that, and you were willing to sit with the question and answer, what did you do next? What did that look like?
Yeah, well, for me, and I know this would be different for each person. For me, the first thing I did was to start journaling around what were my dreams when I was young, and what do I remember just naturally created that feeling of passion and aliveness and wonder and excitement. And so the first thing that came up for me that may be unique to me is I remembered my little girl self, before the difficult things started happening, always just wanted to be a dancer. And I felt like that's the only dream I ever had. And at the time, I think I was about 44 years old. So my logical brain was like, well, I can never have that, because I only understood dance and movement as a performing art. And so I'm like, it's too late for me. And if I had listened to my brain, then that would have been a non-starter. I would have given up. But I must have just gotten into some sort of youthful curiosity. So after asking the question and pulling up that memory of what really made me come to life, I just started asking other questions curiously, like, well, how could I give that to myself? And that started an online search of, I don't know, like I just started simple. I guess I'll just take a local dance class. I don't know. It just seems like if I could just be dancing more, I would be happier, and I could do that. And that's when I stumbled on that there was this world of dance and movement as a healing art. And I'd always been into personal growth and spirituality, and I didn't know those two worlds came together in any way. So I just followed my intuition, like things that pulled me. And I found a workshop of a form of dance and movement. And it was a 3-day introduction. And I went and attended that. And that 3 days changed my life, changed the entire trajectory of my life.
Wow. One question, 3 days. And just trusting your intuition, and now a whole career change, a pivot change, and offering a gift to the world.
Oh,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, I would say, the question, and also having the question be about where can this come from inside of me and not from
Mm.
outside of me. I think those two things. And then taking that leap, like you did, that leap of faith, being willing to try something out that was new. And then the experiences that I had there, that was what taught me how to relate to my body as a being and not a thing, and to listen to what my body was saying and to follow my body. I would say from that, everything else that you named happened. The fact that we're sitting here today, and the whole list of all the things I've healed from, but also that this has become all I do. I was just a very corporate, very C-suite, very, very business woman. I just never imagined that one day that all I would be doing was teaching people how to follow their own bodies in movement. It's the best thing ever. But I credit the body. Like I could never have, that's what I'm saying. I could never have figured that out with my brain. Was just following the wisdom that's been here all along. And that's why I love teaching people to do the same, because where they'll go will be different than where I went, but it'll be no less incredible.
Right. And magical. And with all due respect to our brain, right? She's wonderful. And she kept you functioning for years and decades. But there was something else within you that knew it wasn't quite enough, or it wasn't good enough, and not from a less than or value perspective, but that you still just didn't feel like your vibrant self that you wanted to feel like when you were a kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And that was the pivotal experience I had in those 3 days that changed everything, was that I was taught how to go towards what I was feeling in my body instead of trying to run away from it. And as I went towards that, I was taught how to allow the emotions that were coming through to just move through. And the big surprise was that rather than that being a negative experience, it felt good to let the emotions move through. And then the big surprise was that it was up from, almost as if underneath them, I felt this coming up from deep inside my body and just sort of come to life in my heart. This is the way I experienced it at the time. I didn't have any somatic training. I didn't have any reason to make this up. Mm-hmm. The feeling was, oh my gosh, there's that young part of me that I thought was lost for 40 years. She was there all along in my body. And literally that part of me, which is wonder, joy, playfulness, liveliness, all of those feelings just moved me. I could feel this part of me alive in me. And because I could feel this part, it wasn't like a peak experience where some highly crafted experience outside of me gave me a sense of that, but then I couldn't hold on to it. Because it came from and through me, I just had that part of me back. And so when I got home, I was like, I already found her. Now I'm just going to move this every day and move anything through that's in the way. I just got that sense of this part of us is still there. We've just, through lived experiences, a lot of things have covered that up in us, but that we can access it through coming towards ourselves and our body and moving. And so that was it. It was that simple.
It can be that simple if we allow it to be. I'm not saying it's easy, and let's not pretend that it's easy, but it really can be that simple. It doesn't mean that it wasn't painful. I'm certain you shed many tears in that room over 3 days.
Oh, and when I came home and kept moving that way, I like to say this and not to scare anyone, but I cried every day in every movement practice that I did for myself for, well, definitely the first 90 days, but even as much as 3 years. But it was different than the way that we're used to feeling and crying, where it comes with a lot of suffering, it really felt good. It felt like, I don't know, let's say you have a garden hose that has a kink in it, and then when you release that and the water's flowing through, it just felt more like that. And then it would always bubble up from behind it the beautiful things I want to feel as well. So it just felt more generative, and it felt like I was growing and I was noticing I was feeling better and my outer world was changing. So yeah, it is simple. It's not always easy, but I found it to be so much easier than the ways I was moving through those difficult things in the past.
Right? Yes, because we overdrink, we overshop, we over scroll, we engage in all sorts of behaviors that are not necessarily optimal because we're trying to avoid, right, what's inside. What do you say to the woman who's listening and is just so afraid and terrified and says, I can't, I don't want to, it will break me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say to that?
Well, the first thing I would say is I feel emotional thinking about it. I would have a lot of compassion. Um, After a lifetime of difficult things happening and the ways that the relationship we might have with our body that's so tender, and so can be so painful, as a woman, I can understand that it's a lot. It may feel like a lot to ask someone to go towards not only their emotions, but feeling them in their body and becoming aware of their body. And it was for me, I was really scared. And what I like to say to people, I can assure you that whatever you have to feel, the safest place to feel it is in your body. The scariest, most painful place to work it out is in our brain. Because what all our brain can do is interpret anything we're feeling in the form of stories that we can't do anything about, projections and stories and worst case scenarios. And, it's sort of a fun house of mirrors up there. And it's counterintuitive, but if we can, ask the brain to just trust and let us feel it in the body, it's just so much safer and so much faster there. And, that's part of what I teach people is how to do that in a way that it is safe and that can also be pleasurable, can be sometimes exciting. And so it's worth it because once we're able to not be afraid of how we feel and meet ourselves in anything that we're feeling, that to me is freedom. It's like I think of how many things in life we don't do because we're scared if it doesn't work out, how am I going to feel? If we're not afraid of our feelings anymore, we kind of can do anything. So
Totally.
I would just encourage women with that too. Like, I know it's scary. We can teach you how to make it safe. It's safer. It will be faster. And it will be freeing to you because you'll no longer have what you're experiencing right now, a fear of feeling that keeps us stuck.
You just said something that got me thinking based on my experience.
Mm.
When we are in our head, she goes bananas, right? Coming up with all of these stories, like you said, and we're trying to problem solve, but we can't. It's like whack-a-mole. But
Exactly.
when you teach us how to be in our body, there's no story. It is
Right.
just the feeling, just the emotion, which is energy, right? That's all an emotion is. And the process of being with that and feeling that move through your body, it's quicker also than what goes on in your head, because what goes on in our head lasts days, weeks, months, years, right?
Exactly.
But when you can process an emotion in your body, it's not instantaneous, but it is a heck of a lot quicker.
Truly. Yeah, you named something that I relate to from my early days, exactly the experience I had of when I learned to do what we're talking about. I would get stuck if something happened or I felt triggered or I was anxious about an outcome. I could get stuck in that for months And I think of how much life, we lose while we're stuck trying to work out something that doesn't feel great over a long period of time. My feelings got hurt, or I feel afraid about something. Yeah, and it's absolutely, if we can disconnect from the brain's interpretation of what it means and what might happen in the future. The body doesn't have a past or a future in that sense. The body's just, this is now. And the body is, this is just a feeling. It's a sensation. It has a temperature. It doesn't have a story. It can take as little as 15 minutes.
Yeah.
15 minutes.
That's
it saves us
powerful.
Months of processing.
Months of processing, bazillions of dollars, hours of our time 100%. On our phone or texting with your girlfriends, like, why can't I, right? Not to mention that on the other side, you feel so empowered, because 100%. When you can face and process the worst pain that you've ever imagined, oh my good heavens, well, the rest of life seems like a cakewalk. And not that it is always a cakewalk, but you realize that, wow, I can do this for that. I can do this. I can do this.
Absolutely. That was and is why I'm so passionate about sharing it. That has come to be my definition of freedom and power. To me, power is being able to conduct whatever is arising in me in an owned and loved way in me, and not be at the effect of things that are happening perceivably to me. And freedom is what you just described. Like, wow, I now know that whatever life gives me, because life will keep giving us things.
Yep.
I know that I'm safe and able to feel it, move it, transform it, and I've got me. And that just opens up the whole world. It truly does.
It totally does. In so many areas of your life, right? Relationships, career. I mean, you name it. It's there. So without being too personal, once you went through this process, what changed for you in the area of romantic love?
Oh,
how did that change? Like, how did this?
Oh,
how
your
did this
listeners
practice
might not like that one.
how did this inform that?
I may have overcorrected. In my case, I'll talk about me, and then I'll also, share a little bit about some students that I've watched
Please,
dance with as part of them. In my case, what happened unexpectedly, it's like I spent, a decade or more, all my personal development was focused on, if I could fix this about myself, then I would get the love that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And the surprise in my case was that the love I was seeking from another person, I just found it so completely in myself, that, and I think, I'm 57 now, so I just became less interesting to me. And I just fell in love with Ishtara and the work that I do in the world. And I think what I did learn is that feeling of falling in love. I may be the last person to know this, Stacey, but I learned that it wasn't exclusive to a romantic relationship. I just have fallen in love. I fall in love with my students and the work that we do and the world, and nature came back to me in a way that was really magical. And I think becoming so full of just the wonder and the adventure, the playfulness, the joys, those were the things I had lost that were really parts of me that I had somehow made up when I was little. I was going to find that if I had the white dress and the sparkly ring.
Yeah.
So for me, my journey is now that my life is very romantic to me. Mm. And if someone comes along and it feels beautiful and it wants to work out, that's great. But it's just, I feel so complete. On the other hand, there's women that have come to the Ishtara practice who that was important to them. They're younger than me, and they were able to use this practice and working with their own nervous system to call in the love that they were seeking. And there's people who've gotten married and who are in long-term relationships. I even have women in their 70s who found a love of their lives. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I love about going to the body. It allows for all the things that we're doing to be completely personal to each person. Every person is as unique
I
as
can
a totally unique person. So
I can share a little bit about my experience. We did 2 rounds together, and at the very beginning of the second round, and the beautiful part was that it's a small group of 6 women, and so we were dancing in a space in our home on Zoom, and everyone was learning to watch other people's bodies, and it was really beautiful. And at the very beginning of the second round, I was skiing with my family and I broke my leg. And I showed up to the first class with a broken leg. And I said, I don't know that I can do this. And 2 things happened. The one is you in the class met me with such grace and respect and taught me that just because my leg was broken, I can still figure out how to move. And I never really contemplated that before. I just thought, oh, my leg was broken. I can't do this. But there are so many ways that we can move our body by sitting in a chair and laying on the floor or whatever it was. And so that absolutely, those 6 weeks fast tracked my healing for sure. And I just put that together now as we're having this
oh,
conversation.
really?
Yes. The
Oh,
other piece, the other piece I had put together when I fell, my daughter and I were together and my husband and son were off. We were kind of all doing laps in this one area. And as soon as I went down, I knew I had broken my leg. And I wanted to remain calm for my daughter because my head, if I was in my head, I would have freaked out. I would have started screaming and crying, and I would have been really scared. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have that experience for my daughter, and I didn't want to have that experience for me or my son or my husband. And all I could remember when I was laying in the snow, looking up at that Lake Tahoe blue sky and seeing those green evergreens, was the safest place for me to be is in my body. And there was no pain in my body. That was the part that tripped me out the most. And when you study pain, right, you know this. It's the pain isn't really the pain. It's the symptom of something else. It's kind of complicated, but I wasn't feeling the pain, but I was able to be so grounded and stay so calm. And I was able to communicate with my daughter. And I mean, I laughed the entire time. Finally got my ride down the mountain, behind ski patrol. It was kind of fun. But those words, the safest place is to be in my body. I have used them so many times in less scary situations than having a broken leg. Because when you learn to be here, you it truly is. It feels safe. It feels grounding. It feels honoring of who we are as women. It's seriously, it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever given to myself was to
wow.
be part of this class and to learn Ishtara. And I still do it to this day. When I'm nervous, I need to, move some energy, or if I want to feel more empowered or strong. There's that TED talk, right? She talks about, I forget her name, but standing in a power pose. But I have dance moves that make me feel powerful and confident that you were able to teach me, and my body taught me. It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, absolutely. Same with me. And I just want to come back to, I remember really clearly you coming to class with a broken leg and being willing to still show up and find other ways to move. It says so much about you. It was one of the more courageous things that I've seen in a class, and
Thank you.
illustrates so beautifully something that I cherish, which is how we can also come to know more about who we really are through what we become aware of that we are doing in our bodies. Because in your case, I mean, I would ask you, like, what did you learn about yourself that you literally embodied that principle? It wasn't, something you read about in a book, but that you literally broke a leg and still found a way to show up as all of you and found ways to communicate through your movement and to stay connected in class and something, what did your body teach you about yourself?
She is strong.
Yeah.
She is a force. She knows. And I learned this in another way when I was pregnant with twins. I carried 39 weeks and 2 days, and I really wanted to go into labor. I wanted to have my water break, but my doctor kept saying, your placenta is tired, your placenta is tired. But I know that I kept those babies inside of me because I wanted them to be inside me for as long as possible. And then when it was time to birth them, I birthed them naturally, all natural, because I knew my body was designed to do that. And thankfully I could. They placed well, and they were able to, do their thing and be delivered down the birth canal, thankfully. But yes, when you trust, she knows what she's doing. She's way smarter than anything going on in my head. Way, way smarter than any podcast, any book that I could read. Yes. Yes. It's trippy when you think about it, but also so comforting that we have this resource at our fingertips. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, and so, yeah, and that's what I observe and know about you is in the way that your body is so powerful and strong. You are also that, you as the complete full woman that you are, one of the most courageous and powerful, generous people.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, yeah. And to the body, what you were saying about lying in the snow. I mean, I'm very afraid of hurting myself in those ways. And the ability for you to, even in that moment, which is a true survival moment for the body, trust and hear those words that my body is the safest place to be, and to allow that to create a more easeful experience for you than if the mind had been panicking. And just that reminds me, listening to your story, how our body's whole purpose is to keep us safe and to help us survive. So of course, in every moment, our body has information for us about the best way to do that, because it's kind of the whole purpose of our body is to keep us alive.
Totally. Yes. I'm a big intuition fan, as my listeners know. How does this practice inform or serve or even juice up one's intuition?
For me, I was always interested before I found embodiment. I was fascinated by people that I perceived had really amazing intuition. And I used to think of intuition as something that comes through the ethers, like the way, we're coming through the ethers to each other right now. And that's just not something I could make happen, because it either happened or it didn't. It was a gift I had or I didn't. What I found out about being in the body, and this is how I relate to intuition, that the body is our source of our intuition. Because, this incredible nervous system is, if we're going to be scientific, it's literally conducting neurons that are energy that have actual information in them. And so our body selves, who are also connected to everything around us and who are cluing in to micro expressions on faces and changes in temperature, and just like animals do, animals are naturally intuitive. It's just more, intuition is more of cultivating that ability to when the information's coming through the body and the nervous system, being able to translate it in an actionable way in our brains, which is just, I would say it's a lost language to humans, to a lot of humans, that can be reclaimed. So I would say the more we clear our bodies of the things we're holding that are creating sort of static or disharmony, and the more we teach ourselves to practice and listen to our bodies, the stronger our intuition gets. So strong. My intuition is like off the charts.
I
The thing,
love
and that's
that.
just really, that's just a natural state that we're all, it's a birthright that we have. It's just sourced from the body,
Yeah.
which makes me a little curious about why so much of the world wants to keep us out of our bodies.
Yes, right. Exactly. Very
How that all
curious indeed.
happened. That's
Yeah.
another podcast, I think, but
That's a whole other podcast that I'm very willing to go and have that conversation for sure. Tell us, who is Ishtara for? How would somebody know, hey, I'm interested in doing this. This could be helpful, aside from just hearing us talk about it and extol the virtues of Ishtara.
yeah. Well, this is the least marketing savvy answer I could give you.
That's what we want, just
Is
real.
that Ishtara is for anybody who has a human body and a nervous system.
Yeah.
I mean, my children have practiced this, and I also teach to 70-year-olds, and I teach to men and women. I would love to teach to teenagers. Having said that, I would say a great place to come to Ishtara is any stage of life where we've reached a point where we're pretty sure that all the things that we've tried, either to source our sense of self-esteem, or to feel good about ourselves, that we would pursue outside of ourselves, that maybe we've exhausted those pathways and we're ready to do the deeper work and come towards ourselves and look for the answers inside ourselves. I think if people have, like I did, have tried all the things, whether that's personal growth or spirituality, lots of therapy, I've done all those things. Medicine journeys is really a big one right now. All those things are extremely valuable if you really want to be able to ground what you're learning into your life and start to have that reflected and changed in your life. It'd be a good time to come to Ishtara so you can learn how to take all that wisdom you've been learning and collecting and embody it in a way that it comes to life in your actual life and in your relationships. I know that you speak to a lot of women in midlife, and I think of all the people that come to Ishtara, that's probably the largest group. It's such, I think, particularly for us who are in that stage where we're having profound changes in our body, where maybe children are also, our roles are changing. The kind of attention we used to receive for certain things is not the same.
Yep.
It's a wonderful time to come to a practice like Ishtara, or anything that would locate your worth and your value and your sense of yourself deeply within you, independent of those outward things, because what it can do is give you a way to live that second half of your life full of meaning and life vitality, and being in like you were, like the things you got in touch with when you hurt your leg, of like a really deep sense of self-discovery that can also lead to new pathways for how you're going to live your life. I think that's a wonderful time to come and start reclaiming our relationship with our body. Whereas a lot of possible paths we can go down in midlife is a real hurtful relationship with our body. The messages we receive and the way we can feel discarded by society.
Yeah, that's real for sure.
Yeah.
I saw this, that was beautiful, by the way. I saw this Dr. Mary Claire, do you follow her on Instagram?
I
She
don't.
she wrote a book called The New Menopause, and she
Oh,
talks about perimenopause and menopause. But she posted this story yesterday. I think it was an advertisement for the country of Norway, Visit Norway, but it was all about menopause. And they were trying to rebrand the time period that is menopause and
oh,
postmenopause as everything that you just said, as this time where we're ready to do life a different way and leave behind some of the mindset and some of our beliefs of the past, and just like feel free and unencumbered, and you know toss all those f's around and like just do the things already, because why not? Like, why not? Yes.
oh my goodness. Yeah, why not? And oh, that's a whole other train of the menopause journey. um, but as you were saying that, what I was thinking about was your earlier question about my romantic life. And I guess I'm realizing for the first time too that before I found this path of embodiment, my whole life was centered around the goal was to find a partner,
Mm.
to have things work out in romance. I can't imagine how difficult that would have been for me if I had both gotten older and then I was still locating like everything that's meaningful that I love about life has to come in that kind of relationship, and it's only getting harder and harder.
Mm. Yes.
And how happy I am that at that time of life I was able to make a total switch and feel so good about feel probably I think better about myself than I ever did in my whole life, and I feel so
Hmm.
fulfilled.
Yeah. So beautiful. I think fulfilled is, it's such an appropriate word, right? It's like your cup runneth over. Sometimes I feel like I walk around with this little secret that only Ishtara graduates have, or anyone who will listen to me as I talk about this. Do you ever feel that way? Like it is. It's just this
It is. I say
little,
it's the best kept
yeah.
secret. Thank you for helping it to not be a secret. It's really hard to.
Oh no, we're gonna get this out. We're totally gonna get this out. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want people to know, or questions, a
Mm.
common question that you have, or a success story, or whatever you're called to share or mention?
Mm. Ah, there's so much. I'm like, where do I start? Trying to think of.
We have time, so it's all good.
I think the most important thing, we've talked about so many things, and I think making it simple for people is really important. And I think what I would mostly want to say is that there's so much that I now know and that I have in my life, from incredible relationships to adventures I'd never thought I'd take, to living in my purpose, to deep understanding and healing around the traumas that I went through, to friendships and connections that I have now all over the world. There's so much richness, but where it all came from was the most simple thing, which is just learning to listen to and follow our own wisdom in our body, and creating a relationship with our body that is, like you've been saying, she throughout the podcast. And I imagine
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't know why. What do you mean the body or the brain is a she? And so, I learned that from another teacher, to relate to my body as a being so that I could have a true relationship that has conversation in good days and bad days. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not objectified, but is very alive and full of intelligence. And, you know, that those things, relating to my body as a being who is here for me, who loves me and wants the best for me, and will do all she can to keep me safe and to guide me to the things that are most meant for me. Being able to listen to that body being, like speak that language so that I can truly hear what the needs are, sometimes their needs, or what the guidance is. And then to have the way to be with my emotional self and the parts of me that my brain wants to avoid, that I know that, like you said, I can be with all those parts of me. That's it. If everyone has that, they will be powerful, free, and they will find themselves down a path that is beyond their wildest dreams. And it doesn't take a lot to teach those things. And once we learn them, it becomes so surprising that we've lived a life without those qualities of being able to hear ourselves. But it's really as simple as that. I learned somatic psychology from my body. Like literally, our body just knows so much. I could learn things, spirituality principles that I'd never studied before, and I would find them outside in books and be like, that's what I felt. That's what I knew. I can't understate the incredible amount of intelligence that is in each one of us. And it's just simply, we just simply need to be taught what we weren't taught, how to listen, how to trust, and how to have a relationship with our bodies. I think that would be my main message. Everything else is just, the incredible unfolding of the life we were meant to live that comes from that place.
So
So that's why I teach
poignant.
what I teach. I just want as many people to have that as possible, as quickly as possible.
It's so poignant. And I will say for anyone listening, it's not therapy. You're not going into a therapist's office and sitting there with a box of Kleenex and just bawling your eyes out for 50 minutes and then leaving and, reapplying your makeup before you go back to work or whatever. It is nothing like that. And that is, I think, one of the most beautiful parts is that you're totally not in your head. You don't have to listen to your story. You don't have to think about it even. What Tracy teaches and her teachers teach is how to go in. So all of that drama that spins is not even a factor. It it's it's so liberating on so many levels, because I know a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I have this big thing that I have to deal with and I've been trying not to deal with it. And I mean, that stress and angst alone and the mental, physical, and emotional energy of trying to keep that at bay it's expensive on so many levels. And Ishtara teaches you how to meet you where you are.
Exactly.
And there's none of that. There's no more resistance. Oh, it's so peaceful. It's so beautiful. I think this should be taught in schools, honestly. I or at the very least in colleges, when women are older. I think definitely it could be taught to kids. But I think every woman I know, every woman listening, I beg
Thank you.
you to run to where can people find you?
So the website is ishtarabody.com. That's ISHTARABODY.com. And what they can do is reach out to me. My email address is on the site. If there's not a listed class coming up, go ahead and reach out to me. I respond to emails. And we can get you set up either with a teacher or with me if you're interested in learning. That's how they can find me. And
I will put that in the show notes, of course.
What?
On Instagram. Okay. What is the Instagram? What's your handle on Instagram?
At Ishtara.
Okay. I will include that.
Thank you.
I almost forgot. I have a couple of parting questions that I like to ask everyone just to kind of get to know you a little bit more on a different level. What is one thing you always pack when you travel that probably not everybody would pack in their suitcase?
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I have something that not everyone would pack. I definitely always, can I say two things?
Yeah, of
I
course.
think,
Yeah.
because the first one, I think maybe a lot of people would have, but I always bring a journal and a pen.
Mm.
Writing in a journal by hand is a somatic practice. So you reach in, when you use your hand, you get into deeper into the body. So I have that. And then also, portable speaker so that I
Mm.
can do my movement practice wherever I am.
There you go. All right. I love that. Um, what has been your favorite age?
Oh, I mean, every age, um, every year since I found movement, which I found at 44, and then I really started teaching Ishtara when I was 50.
Mm.
So I'd say the 50s are really marvelous. There's so much freedom and so much beauty in when the wisdom of our lived experiences all come together and we're feeling healthy and whole, and being able to share that with other people. Collapse time for other people.
Yes.
Move into that
Yes.
stage of life feels really good.
Mm. I
Yeah.
agree. I so agree. It's so juicy right now. It's so good.
It's a really good time in history for women, in midlife and
Hmm.
beyond as well.
Yes.
It's a
I
really
agree.
good time for us.
Even 20 years ago, it wasn't like this. Even 10 years ago, it
No,
wasn't
not
like
at
this.
all.
Hmm.
No.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So,
And one last question I like to ask every guest: who is a woman or person in your life who you feel we must hear from? Maybe she's got a story or
yeah,
a gift or a skill that everybody needs to know about.
absolutely. 100%. I did. She's not easy to find, but I can get you in touch with her.
Okay.
In addition to movement, the person whose teachings changed my life is a woman named Kristen Dalzin.
Mm.
And you experienced the gift that she gave to me in our classes, because there's the part where we have our relationship with ourself and our own body. We're also humans. And so there's this relational body, this group body, our body of belonging to each other that
Mm.
is so important to us. And what Kristen taught me is that there so much I could heal in myself, in my own body, but there are certain wounds that those wounds, when they happen in relationship, only really heal in a new experience of safe relating with other people. And so I spent 3 years learning from her, and um, her she was the teacher who taught me what safety really is, and safety inside of relationship, and helped me heal. So we might call them our sister wounds, the wounds
Mhm.
that we have in relationship to other women, which is a whole other podcast.
Mm.
She is a 30-year trained master Reiki teacher, and also, a master teacher of the relational body. And she is absolutely delightful, flirtatious, deep, brilliant. I think all women need to sit and learn from her. So I would
Done.
love to have her
Can't
on.
wait. Can't wait. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much. Thank you, Tracy, for being here today, for having the courage to look your very deep pain in the eye and being willing to ask the question and then follow what your body told you to do. Because here you are helping so many women reheal and repattern and rewire and look at things that they've ignored or spent decades chasing or trying to avoid. And right through I'm going to mess this up, but right through the fire, through the ashes,
yeah.
there's all of this rebirth and growth and beauty that comes. So thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you for
being
doing
here.
the same, Stacey. Thank you
Oh,
for having me on.
oh, mwah. Thank you.
Bye.